Hello everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. We are continuing with our series Chess Lessons from Grandmasters, and today we are looking at the part 2 of our Rook and King endgame. In our previous video, we had the Black King on the last rank, on the H rank. Today, the King is in the center of the board, and once again, we need to think of the best way to checkmate the king with the least number of moves. In the center of the board, the king is strongest. It has the ability to move to 9 possible squares. Whereas if you look at the white king that is on the edge of the board, you can see that the king has the opportunity to move to just 5 possible squares. So the aim of the rook and king endgame is easily confine the opposing king to a position where it has the least number of legal moves to make, and then we could checkmate the king. So how do we do that in this situation? Well, it's simple. The white king would have to replace the black king in the center of the board. So the white king first and foremost would approach the black king with e2. Let's say for instance, the black king moves to d5. Then we come to a critical position where we have to ask ourselves, does the white king move to d3 or does the white king move to e3? I want everyone to think of this for a while and come up with an answer. Well, if you thought of e3, then yes, you are very correct. And you're improving in your mastery of the endgame. Because as you can remember from our last video, we made mention that this is the ideal position we want the kings to be. The king should be opposite each other such that the rook can be able to move towards the rank of the opposing king and check the king. But of course, in this situation, when the white king moves to the black king, it becomes the black king's turn to play, and the black king would move away. We need a situation where the white king is opposite the black king, but it's the white king's turn to play, such that the rook can then make a check. But in this situation, we don't have that. So what do? We move to the side of the black king rather. Don't forget, the white king moves to the side of the black king, such that if the black king tries the same idea to move back, the white rook can then move to check and confine the black king back to fewer and fewer squares that are legal. So of course the black king would know that and will probably not play that. So let's say for instance the black king moves down to c4. What is the best move for us to play here? Exactly, h5 still works. h5 limits the black king the opportunity to move towards the 5th rank. And if you can look, the white king occupies the 2 squares in front of the black king. So the number of squares that the king can at any point in time go to in this point is just 12 squares. So the king is getting confined little by little. So the black king can then move to, let's say for instance, the black king moves to c3. What do we do here? Do we go straight to check the king? Of course it could work. But remember, our main aim is to reduce or confine the number of possible moves for the king. So just moving down to the 4th rank will do just fine. Now the king can no longer move towards the 4th rank, and the white king controls the squares in front of it. So the king is going to move down, of course, and then we start a series of moves. check and protect. We check with the rook and protect the rook with the king. So you can see it. The rook checks. What does the black king do? He moves towards the rook to pick it up, and the white king protects. The king has to move, and it moves. And once again, check. The black king moves to pick up the rook, and the white king protects. And we do the exact same thing. Check. So we could ask ourselves, okay, yes, we could ask ourselves, why doesn't the king move to d1, for instance? Well, that just leads to mate in 2, because if the king moves to d1, all the rook has to do is to just come down to c3, and the king now has only one legal move to make, and that is e1. And all of a sudden, the black king is opposite the white king, and the rook can then move down to execute a checkmate. So, it's very important for us to understand these tactics. When a person is in tight time control, you do not move in between the rook and the king, because it just makes the checkmate faster. So, where will we? Okay, so I think this is where we were. So, check to the black king. The black king moves down, which is the only square, and the same tactic we just talked about, we repeat it here. The rook comes down, and now the king has just one more square to go to, and then we execute the checkmate. So let's have a recap on our part 2 of the rook and king endgame. So in the rook and king endgame, when the opponent's king is in the center, first thing we do is to try to replace the opponent's king in the center. So the king moves towards the opponent's king to replace it. And then, once the black king is out of the center, we use the rook to confine the king to a few squares. Limit the number of squares that the king can move towards. And afterwards, the king and the rook can then move simultaneously to checkmate the black king, where the rook checks the king and the white king protects the rook. So I think that is all for now, and I'll see you on our next video.